The pandemic provided a one-off opportunity to monitor and record potential adverse reactions, given they must have been expected, but this data has not been collected. Moving to my next topic, Mr Wald reminded us this morning that the scope of Module 4 is necessarily provisional, and we're grateful for that indication. My lady, we submit that you should include within your scope the issue of support for the vaccine injured and bereaved. In our submission, your inquiry should include an examination of why those individuals have been discriminated against in the provision of healthcare services, and in particular, why they've been denied equal access to appropriate medical testing to help identify relatively common pathologies in post-vaccine patients, and a specialist cohort of medical professionals who can contribute to research and inform clinical guidelines, and a dedicated research hospital. My lady, it should be the concern of this inquiry that there is currently no appropriate treatment of vaccine-induced illness and injury, or an appropriate level of psychological and emotional support, or adequate financial support for those we represent. The vaccine injured and bereaved have spent the past 3 years, both individually and as a collective, asking for the help from this country's medical professionals, mainstream media and members of Parliament. They've been met with standard responses that promote the vaccine and that completely fail to address the needs of the injured and bereaved. An analogy can be drawn with listening to someone who's been in a serious car accident and then telling them about all the benefits of cars, and then how many people haven't been killed by cars. No other medical condition or injury is treated in this way. Turning then to the vaccine damage payment scheme, my lady, you've stated in your provisional scope that you'll examine whether any reforms are necessary. In short, they are, and what is required is both radical and urgent. It's the clear view of those I represent, a large number of whom have made claims under the scheme, that it is no longer fit for purpose. As of July of this year, the scheme has received a total of 6,399 claims, of which 2,352 have been notified of an outcome. Over 500 of those claims have been waiting for more than 12 months, with 166 of them waiting for over 18 months to receive an outcome. 96% of those claims have been refused. Many have been turned down on causation, despite having evidence from multiple consultants that their injuries started following vaccination, and despite having received exemptions, and despite having an adverse reaction recorded in their permanent medical records. Only 127 claimants have received an award, while 177 claims were unsuccessful solely because they did not meet the 60% disablement criteria, even though causation was accepted. This highlights, my lady, the inherent shortcomings of the current all-or-nothing scheme, leaving those claimants without any award. By comparison, before the pandemic in 2019 to 2020, out of 70 claims made, only 1 claim was rejected for failing to meet the disability criteria. VIB UK have been campaigning for the government to reform the vaccine damage payment scheme, in particular to improve the time it takes to assess and award claims, to remove the limited eligibility and criteria for causation, and amend the one-size-fits-all award and payment, which should have no upper limit. My lady, we also ask that as part of your examination you review the care pathway provided to ensure appropriate medical and emotional support to the vaccine injured and bereaved, the lack of a trauma-informed approach to the claiming process from start to finish, and the qualifications and relevant experience of the medical assessors employed to analyse VDPS claims and appeals. I now turn to my fourth topic, that of disclosure and experts. In our written submissions, we made a specific request for cross-disclosure of evidence from Modules 1 and 2A and C on vaccines, and we're grateful for the indication this morning that the Module 4 team is checking requests both on the Rule 9s from other modules and for the disclosure will be reviewed. In our submission, this review needs to be thorough and broad. In respect of experts, my lady, we ask for early conversations with the inquiry legal team about those experts under consideration. Those we represent have a deep understanding of those with expertise in the issues that impact on them and can provide meaningful assistance to the inquiry in this regard. There was nothing identified, however, by Mr Wald this morning about experts who can provide the inquiry with the expertise on the mechanism of adverse vaccine injury. For example, haematologists, cardiologists, immunologists, just to name a few relevant specialisms. So we'd hope that dialogue can continue on that topic. May I turn now to address the listening exercise? I'm grateful for the confirmation that the inquiry wants to hear from those who suffered vaccine damage as a result. of the vaccine rollout. However, despite this stated aim, our clients note with concern that none of the key lines of inquiry seek to research the injury and bereavement caused by the COVID-19 vaccine. In our submission, the inquiry cannot simply ignore the reality of this lived experience for an unknown number of people, and the inquiry should be targeting research and evidence that allows it to properly understand the number, the nature and the degree of these injuries in order to fully establish the facts surrounding them, which in turn can then inform your findings, my lady, and any concrete recommendations for future health crises. My final but important topic then, my lady, is how the inquiry ensures effective participation for those we represent. And we are grateful for recognition by Council to the inquiry that those we represent have relevant evidence to give. And we ask you, my lady, to consider from the outset how you will hear from those we represent at the oral evidence hearings. They are the only individuals who can give first-hand evidence to you of their experience of vaccine injury, their experience of reporting the injury, and their experience of the vaccine damage payment scheme. We are grateful for the timetable set out this morning in respect to future hearings, and Mr Walking's counsel has indicated that the inquiry will give as much notice as possible for deadlines. If there is a standardised process of deadlines that can be shared, not just for Council's convenience, but which gives proper time for those of our clients whose injuries impact upon their vision, their concentration, their processing and recall, to consider documents provided by the inquiry and by their legal team, and to give their instructions on them, we would be grateful. Some of those we represent, my lady, have gone to considerable effort to be here today, and I urge the inquiry not to assume that because they are here and because they look well, that they are actually not struggling. They are all living and managing acute and chronic health conditions. Standing or even breathing is a struggle, and we ask the inquiry and its staff to please bear this in mind. They will need facilities in the hearing centre to be available to them to stand, sit, lie and move in a way of their choosing to enable them to be able to properly follow the evidence and engage with your inquiry. We are grateful for the welcome they have received this morning from your hearing staff. In addition, we do echo the submissions made by the bereaved families for the provision of satellite venues for those we represent, which would mean that they could then attend without the arduous travel. For example, a number who sit here today have travelled from Glasgow, and there are others across the UK who would want to watch proceedings but be with others for emotional support, particularly given their difficulties in accessing support outside of their own communities. There may also be barriers to those individuals engaging online because of vision or cognitive impairment. So, my lady, in conclusion, and without risking the patience and the stomachs of the stenographer and others, the UK CV family, the Scottish Vaccine Injury Group and the Vaccine Injured and Bereaved are grateful for designation as core participants and are here to assist you and your inquiry. This inquiry is a historic opportunity to properly recognise and record their experiences, away from the misinformation and political agendas, to build trust in our medical and public institutions and our media, and for you to make clear and concrete recommendations that will have a significant impact on their lives and those of millions of others. Thank you, my lady. Those are my submissions.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms Morris.